Hey folks, welcome to the Market Internal Review for Friday, July 28th, 2023. So Friday started off with a bang. We had a insane gap of about 330, looks like. And this particular Friday, or this particular day, really in general, gave me a ton of signals that I had not seen for quite some time. I've definitely been waiting for a day like this. I was very excited. I was posting on Twitter. Pretty much tried to call a trending day early, almost right at open actually, which is insane if you consider the gap that we had. But I was seeing 1800 volt. I was seeing bullish volume. Trend was, believe it or not, in the oversold territory, which, as I've mentioned in past videos, trend can skew. You got to let the data come in and let it catch up with its calculations, but that's what it showed from the beginning. We had a spike of volatility, not quite to 15, about 14 and a half. And anytime we've seen that in the past, there's been a violent reaction back down, which most of the time is an inversely correlated move on SPY, which means SPY would rise. The big thing I was watching was extreme tick closure on the bullish side right at open. What was going to happen? Were we going to give that up, or were we going to reclaim that area, or test that area at all, or are we just going to start ripping? So I saw what appeared to be a little bit more of like an algorithmically price delivery, and typically it's just when you see this tight melt up kind of range where all the higher lows and higher highs are, I mean, almost dang near on repeat. So there's a very solid pattern that you could almost predict. And it did start to break up by about 10. But basically, no bear tick in the morning. We had one little peak of one. Trend is in an imbalance, which is because we're in the oversold area, which can mean that we're going to start buying towards the bullish side of trend. We already have the sneak peek of ad and Vold telling us that we're bullish, especially the price of New York Stock Exchange. We've got 1,800 stocks in advancement. Meanwhile, SPY is continuing to rise up. I'm watching these TWAP levels from last session here, and trying to determine, if this is an area that we're going to hold, being that it's the standard deviation ending price, first standard deviation ending price of yesterday, or rather Thursday the 27th. If we couldn't break out of that, then potentially we're looking at Thursday's TWAP price. Did start to see a bear tick here, and we're starting to see a bearish reversal potentially on the price of the New York Stock Exchange. We are seeing some dimming following by a reversal back into bright on the ad band, meaning that price is quickly being sent back up. So the dips are being bought up. That's what these quick gaps in the color mean, effectively. The average tick closures continues. I mean, it's essentially a flat line at this point, which I think when you look at the price here, you look at the wicks, we're not really going up very, very high at this point, but we are still trending up. Here we have kind of our backup of the delta of the New York Stock Exchange, the price ticks, kind of giving us a similar, like, hey, it's bullish, but not by much, right? It's flat. So at this point, I'm watching to see what happens with this bear tick. Are we going to start making lower lows? And, we basically rebased around TWAP. The bands are all flat on TWAP. We're not seeing a lot of action, and now we're in trend balance. But we have our breakout signal on upper TWAP after a retest for the first standard deviation on the current session. It was a very exciting setup, and for most of the morning, we did trend up. It pretty much stopped right around noon, and I ended up watching Qs because they have been the weaker link, and if we were going to push up, I was expecting Qs to give me that early signal. If tech is being bought, We all know tech has been extremely bullish and has been starting to have a little bit of a pullback. So if tech can see buyers, they're stepping in, then I believe that was really all the catalyst that was needed for SPY and the Russell and the Dow to rise up even higher. It did kind of become stifled here at this point. I'm not sure if there was a lot of news or what here, but sadly we didn't get our trending day that I had hoped for, but we definitely got an amazing move even after such a large overnight gap. It was really incredible. But looking at the tick levels here, we see the strong ticks that we had from the morning down here and mid morning session around here, and then right around noon is when we printed this one, and then this big bear tick or bear candle rather, I mean, wipes out, gosh, a good hour almost of data. So that's a pretty significant reversal. Price is still showing it's in the decline. Volume never really got as bright as price, but it is bullish, kind of weak, I guess, overall, with the fact that it's never been really too bright. That being said, once this bear candle prints, we break the first standard deviation high back down, bounce on this session TWAP first standard deviation from Thursday, do a slight retest of a tick level, but couldn't quite stay above there. And then we see a complete mean reversion retracement, which trend was already giving us the indication, sends us from the second deviation high down to the low deviation high. So perfect reversion, exactly what trend gave us the signal for, and the market was able to do that complete test. This move alone here was about $2.50. So quite interesting. We pegged almost on Thursday's TWAP price. We didn't quite get there. I think we were about 30 cents off. Lots of buyers stepping in here, made a bear tick extreme, and the trend indicator basically said there's no balance, there's no imbalance, we're kind of in no man's land. It's one of my least favorite areas for trend to be in. But we also see a very fast brightening of ad. We went from dim straight to bright again, and we start to see the price reverse. So fascinating setup. I mean, I got a piece of this up move. I also got a piece of this down move. I didn't really care what happened for the rest of the day. I kind of expected, honestly, to see basically a neutral, choppy kind of into the end of the week. It can be typical for Fridays, and I think especially with buyers basically saying, hey, guess what? We're not testing this gap down here from the overnight. I don't think sellers were going to try to push, and nobody's going to buy at the end of a week. Options market probably already set up for next week. So very fascinating Friday. I was absolutely shocked with the kind of move we had even after this gap. The fact that we didn't test this gap definitely has me considering that we'll probably see a little bit of a gap test coming next week if futures doesn't already open us down here in this range. One thing I wanted to show though, so I believe in one of my last videos I talked about a multi-time frame analysis using session, week, and monthly TWAP. I want to hone in here on the Qs. So I ended up longing and shorting Qs Friday, and I did it all based off of weekly TWAP. So here is, these green dotted lines are not this very last week of the 28th, but the prior week, so mid third week of July. This is their price target standard deviation lines at their last Friday close. And I mean, it was incredible. I'm watching the price react. Let's see if I can find my my circle tool here. And I posted this on Twitter. I'm watching the price react right on this TWAP line. It's the first, I believe that's the first standard deviation high on the weekly TWAP. It could be wrong, but 4 different times it bounced on this. So I think previous day high was, yeah, somewhere around here, but I was basically projecting somewhere up around here, and we didn't obtain that. We didn't get there. But what was fascinating to me was drawing a 50% line. You could see how clean that was. I mean, it was just incredible seeing this. Even this long over here, look right where it bounced, right off of that weekly TWAP line there. So this was, believe it or not, this is what gave me a lot of confidence to go in long on Qs, hold them every time I saw this test. Highly recommend you take a look at that. I think even SPY itself had some fantastic setups. Yeah, here's a current weekly TWAP bounce on SPY. Just beautiful price action against these lines. They really hit like crazy. So how did we end on price and volume for the New York Stock Exchange Friday? So we started hot. Almost, I really had hoped that we'd see price go above this line, but we didn't. It started its downtrend. We ended around not quite 1200. So price still bullish heading into Friday at the end of the day. Volume continued its bullish push. It did have a slight cool down midday around lunch, and then we just kept ripping right over this this extreme volume line here. Very high volume. If we look at some of the past days, if my data will load, we've been having some weather, and I have Starlink, so yeah. So look, I mean, even since early July, we've only seen that high volume a couple times, and this day, July 7th, is when we saw right almost on that particular value. I'm not sure what happened July 11th, but that would be an interesting day to go and review. But anyways, very high volume. Given that price was in agreement, given that we had this huge gap, and the rest of the indices were all seeing, I believe, some similar price action. So Russ had a huge gap, more flat than the other indices. We already looked at the Qs. Dow had a weaker gap compared to the others, and I think since they fell within their first standard deviation, they couldn't break back out. I guess Qs did as well. Qs had a much more smoother time. They didn't drop near as much as SPY did. But yeah, I don't know. I think I'm still going to expect some kind of retracement back into that gap, given that price and volume were in agreement with the indices, or rather the indices were in agreement with New York Stock Exchange price and volume. I'm going to say that we're probably going to see some retracement. So it'll be interesting going into next week. If we take a look at, let's just turn off weekly TWAP here, and we're going to turn off session, and we're just going to go to monthly TWAP. So this month is over. July, when we start next trading session on Monday. Oh, I take it back. We have one more day this month, Monday the 31st of July, but then Tuesday is starting August. So most of these TWAP values are essentially done. We are still within the second standard deviation of the monthly TWAP. So still bullish on SPY. We were able to hold off the monthly. We're dragging that up. So it should be pretty fascinating. Qs, I think we did break back out after that huge dump we had. Yep, we broke back out. We almost tested it here. So overall, still bullish. We're not as overextended, I don't believe. But it'll be interesting to see where we end after Monday. All right, I'm going to wrap it up here. I'm going to keep it faster for the weekend. Hope you all had a good Friday, and hope you all are going to be ready to hit it on Monday. Thank you for watching, and as always, happy trading.